it quickly behind his back. Catch Jackson turning, and look out, here he comes. 23 and white. Scotty for three. And Anderson going right away. Stockton comes over on the double team. Now back to Scotty.
Now, he was a nice person, those reporters. He saved my life. Michael was walking out, and the group of reporters who were all talking to him as he walked out. I was leading the group with my reporter there, and I was this.
Hello and welcome back to the Double Clutch podcast. I'm one of your usual hosts, Mike Miller, and once again, I'm joined by Mr. Tom Hall.
Good evening. Just before we get into it tonight, Mike, big congratulations to you. You've got some big news. At the end of what's been a pretty naff year for most people, you're going to be a dad again. So congratulations to you. Yeah.
Cheers, man. Looking forward to that. It's been an interesting few weeks, months, and we're slowly realising that we're going to have to do all the hard work we've just done with the 2-year-old all over again. Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, my son has got a basketball name bestowed upon him. His middle name's Jordan, surname is Miller, obviously. So he's got the Reggie reference, and his initials are JJ, so he's got JJ Reddick reference. So he better be an absolute shooter. The next
Have you got anything planned for the next one? Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. At the minute, I'm lobbying with the authorities. That's the other half. As to try and get the initials JAM, so it could just be Jam.
I like that. Yeah.
It's not going very well. But anyway, we're not here to talk about my paternal prospects. We're here to talk about the NBA. We finally have NBA basketball back in our lives. I can't wait to get into this, actually, although it feels like 2 minutes since the season ended. So before we jump right in, if you're not already, please make sure you're following us at Double Clutch UK on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have a Discord, which is discord.me/Double Clutch. If you're not watching us live, we are live right now on Twitch, twitch.tv/Double Clutch UK. Shout out to Kirk, who is producing this, having recently moved in the off season as a free agent to his new abode. This is his, I think he moved in on Friday. He's ready to rock and roll and back on the, what did you call it earlier? Enterprise. You and your Star Trek references. But anyway,
and I understand that he's got no means to fire back with sound effects today because they're not working, so we can say whatever we want and throw it in Kirk's direction.
Can't we? Yeah. Although he could just stop the stream and then
that's true.
We'd be lost.
Yeah, take that back.
Cool. Let's jump straight in then. The NBA preseason. It's here. We are amongst it. What have you watched so far? How have you taken to seeing almost proper NBA basketball back in our lives?
Yeah, so it's been unfortunate timing for me because I had Corona a couple of weeks ago, and then as I stopped isolating and went back to work, the NBA started up again. So I've not watched any games in full. I've watched a lot of snippets, a lot of those really terrible game recaps that the NBA app puts out that just aren't even worth watching. And then going on to the condensed games as well, trying to see a lot of the games that are going on just to get a feel for who's been out there, and the draft prospects more than anything. We kind of know what we're expecting to an extent from a lot of the teams, but just to see what these prospects actually look like after we've read about them for so long, just to see if the hype is real or not.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't put any stock in the I love watching basketball full stop, but in terms of predicting how well a player is going to succeed, I struggle to put any stock in any of the preseason. I've managed to watch, I think, 4 games in full now, and several other highlight reels and condensed games. My first overreaction was I'm going to have to start retracting my stance on LaMelo Ball. After
Interesting.
He looked like he was in control. He looked like he understood the game. And he threw a couple of. One of them was a sloppy round the back pass, but he's a rookie. He's gonna. But one of them was actually a really nice sort of good feel for the game. Other than that,
a massive 0 points for LaMelo as well.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not necessarily about. It doesn't mean anything yet at this stage. It's just sort of seeing how comfortable they are. But for me, it was. I watched Memphis versus Timberwolves. I wanted to see Ja Morant, and it also happened to be Karl Anthony Towns' first game since his mother passed, and well, 6 other members of his family, and he looked absolutely shell shocked, like he was still Cat, but you could see his eyes were red and glazed, and he just horrible situation to be going through. Nets and Wizards, watched that. Picked up the KD Kyrie partnership, which we'll get onto shortly. What else did I have? Atlanta versus Orlando. I really want to see what these Atlanta Hawks are like. I would never normally pick that game to watch, but there's just so much in Atlanta now that I'm intrigued to see how this team gels. There's a lot of new personalities, a lot of new skill sets that they've got there, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they pull all that together. We've got games now through till Thursday, I think. Thursday or Friday. So there's quite a lot of games to go through. Is there anyone in particular you are keen to sort of to watch, get some reps watching them?
I mean, it's kind of the obvious one for me, but the Celtics haven't played yet, and there's a lot of questions about what they're going to look like. Followed by the eye roll for those that aren't watching, Mike. But I mean, there's so many questions about the Celtics in terms of Kemba's going to be out until what looks like January. So is Jeff Teague going to start at the point? Is it going to be Peyton Pritchard? Is it going to be Smart moved off the bench into that role? Is Tatum going to take another step up in terms of his role on the scoring front and all that kind of thing? So there's a lot of questions for them, and just a lot of rookies as well across the board, as we've already said, whether that's on the Celtics or not. The teams that haven't already played, just to see what those young guys look like and if they can step into a role in the early days.
Yeah, no. For those who aren't watching live, Tom is representing in an Al Horford appreciation T-shirt, which is pretty nice to see. I appreciate he's not a Celtic, nor is he a 76er anymore. But I'm
in two minds about this T-shirt because it was designed by Spike Eskin, who's the host of the Rights to Ricky Sanchez, infamous Sixers podcast. So I thought, can I go and buy this now Al Horford isn't part of the Celtics? But
of course you can.
I mean, I still stand by it. So
it's just why not? Why not? Absolutely, why not? Fandom is fandom, even if it's Celtics fandom. Okay, so saying that we can't take much away from the games themselves, watching the preseason, seeing the empty seats, seeing the new normal in the NBA, how have you reacted to that? Because for me, it looks bleak. Like they've done really well with and Kirk will correct me on the word, I can't remember what it is, but the fake sound they pump in.
Yeah.
They've done really well on that, but there's just a massive empty seats. They haven't even put them in a colour or anything. They've not put the jumbotrons around the side. They could do so much there. It's just really, really weird. We're still not seeing halftime entertainment, which is great, except for the fact I miss Red Panda. So I just wondered what your reactions were to the first few games.
It's not great. It was never going to be the same, even in the bubble. Like it wasn't what it should have been, especially for the playoffs with the crowd reactions and stuff. But they kind of made it the best it could be with having the screens so close to what was going on, and you could see people. Now we're back in the stadiums. It is really lacking any kind of atmosphere. And I like it for about 5 minutes that you can hear what the players are talking about on the court, and you can hear the coaches shouting and stuff. And then it kind of wears off because you don't realise until it's gone. That watch from your sofa, how much that influences your involvement in the game, and how different the moments look just from the crowd cheering or booing or whatever it is. So it's kind of a shame that we're seeing a lot of these players come back that we've not seen for such a long time. A lot of these new guys coming into the league that have got such a lot of hype around them, and there's not a crowd there to see them. So Twitter is going to be the place to be, I think, for the near future.
Always is. NBA Twitter is the place to be. You sort of touched on it earlier. I'm intrigued to see how players have added to their games in this off season, because for some guys that's been 2 months long, and others it's been 9 months. So I have no idea what to expect from some of these guys and what they could have added to what they can put on the floor. Like Thomas Bryant was pulling up for threes for the Wizards, which wasn't something I thought he'd have in his wheelhouse at this point. So it's just going to be a season full of intrigue. But we got to see the Nets bring out their star tandem for the first time, KD and Kyrie. But perhaps overshining that debut was their Insta Live, which took place the night before, I want to say.
Yeah,
Which
one or
I
two
know you've
nights
seen
before.
it. So the Insta Live, I loved it. Like I didn't watch it live. I watched it back, and
Yeah.
I thought it was fantastic. I genuinely I actually came away with a better impression of Kyrie than I've ever had.
How? Is this because he's not on a team that you like?
It's just because I don't know. Like he believes wholeheartedly in what he's doing, and I don't think he's a bad guy at heart. I just think he's like so far off the reservation that people don't know how to interpret him.
Yeah. So just to summarize for people that didn't see it, he was having this really bad, weird, I would say, conversation with Kevin Durant on Instagram Live where he was just talking about how he wants to play this year, saying that this bizarre thing about in my former life, I was you. I didn't really understand what he was on about.
Yeah, I think.
And then he was saying that he feels like he plays 7 foot tall and he wants 8 post-ups a game. It's just the whole thing was very bizarre. There's a lot of debate going on as to whether like it was genuine or not, or Kyrie was like trolling all the news reports and stuff like that. I know Mo, who we had a few weeks ago, he was saying it had to be a joke. But I think knowing Kyrie and what he's like, I just think the guy's delusional.
I've got to admit, in the last 5 minutes after the interview had ended, and he started talking about alternative. I can't remember what it was, but it's just this whole idea of a spiritual war and stuff. I was like, okay, maybe we've gone a little bit too far now. But the chemistry between KD and Kyrie was apparent in that conversation. There was like a genuine, and they said like "love you" at the end of at the end of it several times. Like, and I know that gets bandied about a bit, but there seems to be like a genuine connection between these two guys. Which, say what you want about what their personalities are like in isolation, where they have said and done things that the mainstream have frowned upon.
Mm-hmm.
Like with two of them on the same team, I think it could be scary for the rest of the league because they're going to be so comfortable in not giving a crap about what anyone else thinks. And I think that's just going to move over onto how they play on the court in a positive way for the Nets.
Yeah, if I had to predict how it went, I think they're going to start off really well. Kyrie's going to be old Kyrie again. Kevin Durant's going to, even if he's like 80% of what he was, he's still going to set the league alight. And I think everyone will be like, oh, look how much we've slept on these guys over the past few months. They've not played. We've forgotten all about them. We need to make Brooklyn the favourites and all this. And then I think as soon as we get maybe towards like, when's the playoffs going to be? Is it like June, July time?
Yeah, June.
Yeah, so maybe when we get to like close to that point, people are going to start seeing the chemistry issues come up. Maybe the rest of the roster is going to be really unhappy with him. I don't see it lasting a full season, and I wouldn't call them favourites. But I think that'll kind of be the momentum that they'll carry early on.
Like, again, I can't place much stock in preseason, but Kyrie looked like peak Kyrie already. In 17 minutes, he had basically 17 points. KD, having watched him take off and dunk a couple of times, I was nervous watching him land every single time. I don't know, maybe I'm getting old, but every time I see guys flying around now, I'm like, oh, he's going to pop something, and it's hampering me. And I just think that these guys are going to tear up the East. If they get James Harden as well, which I don't think they will, and we'll come on to that in a moment. But if they get Harden as well, this is a team with some serious offensive potency. And KD slept on as a defender. I genuinely think they could run the East.
Yeah, it's going to be close. They are probably on their good days probably the two best players in the East with Hiatus as well. And so having two of them on the same team is going to be scary. It just depends on. Luckily for everyone else, there's only one ball to go around, and so if they can, if other teams can try and get under their skin, try and rile Kyrie up a bit. The bizarre thing that we haven't particularly planned to talk about has been the whole Kyrie media hiatus, which ended today. It was like the shortest media blackout anyone's ever given in their life.
That's because they fined him $25,000.
Yeah, and rightly so as well.
Oh, I don't even care about things like that. I just like the narrative it adds. Yeah, Kirk's just flipped up the dunk that I'm talking about, that I was referencing. But I don't know. This team's scary. Rich Baz in the chat. Shout out to Rich for always watching. KD is the jock at school that is best buds with the weird kid. Think Zac Efron in 17 again. I might have seen that film. Isn't that a remake of another one? And then then there's some chat about Saved by the Bell. Shout out to Flying Tortoise in there as well. Yeah, like Zach and Screech. Okay, no, I get that, except Screech couldn't hoop. So let's move on to the potential third party in Brooklyn if this trade ever happens. We're going to talk about James Harden. The saga continues. There's been confirmation tonight that he will be playing on Tuesday, so that's tomorrow. Adrian Wojnarowski tweeted earlier today that ESPN is reporting the arrival of John Wall has left All-Star NBA guard James Harden unmoved and uninterested in pursuing a new partnership, and a franchise star continues to push the Houston Rockets for a trade. Now, what made me chuckle was Real GM tweeted the same story basically, but just they changed it to James Harden still wants a trade, but intends to be a professional in the interim with the Rockets. Intends to be a professional. What? He's just skipped training camp because he was at rappers' parties and strip clubs. Where's the professional bit?
Ridiculous.
It's mad. But he's got a list since we spoke last week about it of where he would like to go to: Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Philly, or Miami. I know that you're someone who frequently gets extremely excited about potential trades. Is there any out of those four that you can see being a destination for him, and what sort of impact will he have there?
Yeah, I think if he could choose, he would probably want to say the Nets, just because he'd have Kyrie and KD. I don't think the Nets would have anything close to what it would take to get someone like Harden. When you've seen Drew Holiday go to the Bucks and what they had to give up to get him, it was like at least 3 first rounders and swaps and players just for someone of Drew Holiday, who's slightly below that top tier. And then you've got Harden, who's one of the best scorers of all time. To get someone like that, it's going to take so much more than just a few first rounders or a young player. It's going to take a lot of those things together. So I don't think that the Nets if they gave up any picks, there would be bad picks in the future anyway, you would imagine. And they've not got that many good young players. Like Karis LeVert's all right, Jarrett Allen's all right, but not enough really to move the needle for Harden. It did come out again on Twitter tonight. It's been floated that Houston were wanting Ben Simmons and 3 first rounders if they were going to do a deal. So that's like the far end. You've got to go into these negotiations asking for the most, and you're going to end up with slightly less. That's probably the most that they're asking for. A lot of the ones that have been flying around on podcasts and Twitter and all that is just the straight up Ben Simmons for James Harden trade. I don't know what you think about that, if the value seems equal or...
If I'm Philly, the most I would give up is Ben Simmons. Okay. I'm not giving extra picks because Ben Simmons is young, an extremely talented player, could develop into be an absolute superstar. I mean, he's already an all-star. He's already an all-defensive player. He's fantastic. I don't care what you say about him only shooting or hitting 2 3-pointers in his career. I honestly don't care at this point. He's such a talent, and he's got a future ahead of him. Harden, I think the longer this goes on, the stories that are coming out, Harden's value is depreciating daily, because we're hearing all these things come out about how in Houston he controlled when practices were, how long they were, got extra days off, did all of this, and to me, like, that just kills the culture straight off the bat. And I would be deeply disappointed in Daryl Morey, who I hold like in the highest regard as an executive. He's a phenomenal guy in terms of what he's able to do with teams. If he goes like the better the devil you know route and just goes back to building around Harden, then my respect level for him drops significantly, because try something new, mate. Like, it didn't work building around him. Let's go somewhere else.
Yeah, you do wonder what Harden will expect if he wants to go to somewhere else, because I can't think of any player recently that's had a team shaped around him as much as Harden has, in terms of he is the center point of that whole offense. All the players that they brought in around him are just focused on making the most of Harden. So you can't imagine him going somewhere like Philly and then having that same like bespoke offense around him. So he's going to have to probably have less of the ball. He's going to have people around him that are less tailored to his skill set. But I mean, it's clearly something that he wants. The interesting one that we didn't talk about just is the Miami thing, because I think it's something else that has been floated. But Miami, I don't think is going to do anything until Giannis has decided what he's doing. I think if we see Giannis, what has he got, like 6 or 7 days now to sign his extension?
7 days, 21st.
Yeah. So I think if he signs, then I think Miami will make moves for James Harden. I personally don't think Giannis will sign soon, so I think Miami will kind of hold the fort until the summer and then see what happens.
See, the Miami thing intrigues me even more than the Philly thing, because I've seen things, they wouldn't want to give up Tyler Hero, and it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
A perennial MVP has the chance to come to your team, and you wouldn't give up. No, there's nothing against Tyler Hero. He's phenomenal for what he is, but he's not of the same level. And I get that he's a younger player, could grow, but are you really projecting him to become a perennial MVP candidate? And the answer is no. What scares me is, or rather, what doesn't scare me, what would surprise me is if the Heat do this deal, knowing that this is, Heat culture, and the least Heat culture thing in the league is James Harden. Like, the guy turns up to the season every year consistently out of shape. He does everything on his own terms, and this is a franchise which, it's got someone like Jimmy Butler, who if Russell Westbrook pisses you off and Chris Paul pisses you off, Jimmy Butler is going to piss you off. And can you imagine James Harden with the weekly body fat testing they do in Miami?
Yeah,
I just do not see how he fits. From an off-court lifestyle, yeah, he is absolutely going to fit in Miami. From an actual on-court contributing to this team in the way they want him to, no. If as much as Daryl Morey would shock me, Pat Riley would shock me even more, because that is it's just madness. Like, it's not the talent. It's not a question of who you would swap for who. It's a question of how this guy fits. And like, culture is fragile as anything, especially in this league.
Can you imagine a top three of James Harden, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo? Like, that would just be nuts, going against all those other teams in the East. You'd have to have them as probably favourites to come out of the East, if not favourites for the title. I know Harden's never done it on the top stage yet, but that'd just be like really intimidating. I don't know what the Heat would give up in terms of future picks, young players, whether they have anything left. You would imagine that Butler and Adebayo would be untouchables in that trade, but it'd be interesting to see what would come out if they do make the move.
Yeah, it would. Like, I could see him assuming the culture, like the personalities and his off-court lifestyle doesn't influence it. I could see them doing really well with him, because he's another guy who can move the ball, who can make, like, don't forget, this guy can average 10 assists a game. He can keep this offense flowing. And whereas Jimmy Butler is an absolute leader on the floor, he's not a leader in terms of putting the ball through the hoop every single time, unless I'm aware he had one of the best playoff games ever, but it was just one game. I'm not disrespecting Jimmy Butler either, because he's a fantastic player, but he's not the scorer that Harden is. You put shooters around him as well and spread that floor. You've got like the Duncan Robinson, who you'd assume they'd want to hold on to, like the Hero, if for some reason they managed to get him and still keep Hero.
Yeah.
Then it could absolutely be, the best offense in the league by a country mile. But I have serious reservations about the disruption his personality would cause. And maybe all these stories that are coming out are sort of Houston leaking it, which seems a bit counterproductive because it detracts from his value. But maybe it's putting off teams so they get a chance to keep him and rebuild the relationship, if that makes sense. Maybe they're Kyrieing him, this situation. they reverse psychology, the whole thing. So the other two options, so we mentioned Miami, we mentioned Philly, we mentioned Brooklyn briefly, Milwaukee. We had a question from Richard Fang 8. This made me chuckle. Not the questions, the concept of Harden and Giannis on the same team. But Bucks-related question of the week. With James Harden saying that Milwaukee is one of his desired destinations, how much of the team would Milwaukee need to actually get rid of, to get him? And do you think him and Giannis could get along if the trade did happen? Because don't forget, there's beef between these two guys. The All-Star draft last year, Giannis decided to pick someone who passed. And was quite vocal about that. And then afterwards, he admitted their defensive strategy was to basically attack James Harden because he can't play defense. There was the clip going around of him throwing the ball in Harden's face, however incidental that was. So Milwaukee, could you see it working, and who would they have to give up?
That was the mad one that got floated out there. I personally don't think that he would actually want to go to Milwaukee. There's a great video if you've missed some of the beef between the two. I think it's Worldwide Wob on Twitter had a great compilation of all of the beef that's gone on through the past few years between the two, and it's just amazing, culminating with that ball to the face. I just think that we mentioned earlier that Milwaukee had to give up so much just to get Drew Holiday, so now they're even more picks down, and I just don't think that they actually have enough to get a deal done. Like, what players are they going to send back? Unless it be someone like Drew Holiday that I don't think Houston particularly want. Like, DiVincenzo is not going to do much for Houston. Like, there's not going to be much that they could send that's going to like bring back the value of Harden. So I just think it's a trade that's never going to happen.
I mean, it would have to be laden with picks, but salary-wise, it wouldn't take a lot to do it. Salary-wise, they could do it with Chris Middleton and DiVincenzo. Or no, not DiVincenzo, with, what's his name? The power forward, backup power forward with dreads. Yeah, DJ Wilson. Yeah. So they could do it with their salaries. So the money works, but it's if you're Houston, do you want to have your John Wall and Chris Middleton? How bad is that?
Yeah, I think you can get better than that if you're Houston. Even if it's from a team where you're not sure if Harden's going to want to re-sign there, I think you'll still get a better offer than Milwaukee.
Out of the four teams, the best deal on the table is a straight swap with Ben Simmons.
Yeah, I agree.
Although, saying that, how do you think Ben Simmons and John Wall would coexist?
You know what? We didn't really mention him in the preseason bit, but John Wall's looked all right, and I've been surprised. Like, he actually looks okay. He's been knocking threes down a decent clip. He's been all right off the dribble. Like, he's not lost that much of his speed, which was his like killer move. So I still don't think him and Ben Simmons will look great together. But you can't like not move for Ben Simmons because you're mortgaging your whole future on John Wall. So
yeah, I agree with that. Okay, let's move on to no. Let's stick with James Harden for a minute. Let's just twist the knife a little further.
Yeah.
So, given all the stories that have come out about him, can we put the onus of Houston's previous failings on his shoulders?
I think, as a Rockets fan, you can't be annoyed at him for the past. I think what he's done for your franchise in terms of the numbers. I know they've not like ever reached the finals, but the way he's carried the team for such a long time, you have to praise him for all of that and the way that he's kind of kept them up there every season. But I think this is the start of the end for Houston. I think they're going to be in a really bad way if he moves or not. And so I think whilst I can't blame the past on him, everything that's going to come is just as a result of him. By all means, it seems like the amount that they gave up for Chris Paul, that was because of Harden wanting him, and then the amount that they gave up for Westbrook getting Paul going the other way, which left them with no picks or anything, that was Harden's fault because then he changed his mind on Chris Paul and wanted Westbrook. Now he's changed his mind again and he wants out and Westbrook's gone, and it's just all looking very bleak for Houston fans. So I think it's all his fault and it's not going to be good for him in a few years' time.
Yeah, you mentioned something there about like they'll be happy with what he's done for the franchise, and undoubtedly he has kept them afloat. But there's an argument that I always have philosophically in my head, randomly. This is really a weird tangent, but if you give someone a $5, they'd be happy you gave them a $5. But if you could have given them 50 quid and you pocketed 45 of it, then they would be less happy when they found out you only gave them a $5 and they could have had 50 quid. And that's the way I kind of look at this, because this is a guy who is paid like one of the highest salaries in the league, like top 3 or 4. He's an MVP, and he's basically a basketball savant. That's what he is. But the way he's controlled this team, the way he's controlled when they play, when they don't play, it might work for him. But for the guy who needs reps because he's come in, fighting for his job in the league, or he's a role player who needs those reps and then isn't getting the benefit of having, we know training is infrequent at best during the NBA season. So if they're then not getting even as much of that in terms of their reps, that's got to be detrimental to the whole team. Like, do you look at the greatest winners in the NBA of all time, and we've got the greatest leaders. And what Harden does and what they do are polar opposites. They're sort of, we talk about these obsessive guys like Jordan and Kobe. He's not in that mold. And maybe that's just his personality for whatever reason. Like, by not doing it, by not putting in that extra effort, by not being obsessive, lifting other players, not to his level, but better than the level they are, is he not shortchanging the franchise and his legacy?
I think so. And I mean, by no doubt, like, he is not a leader at all, as you said. And I think it will be interesting. It sounds like a lot of disrespect. It's not, because Harden is one of the incredible players of our generation, and you cannot stop him from scoring with his step back moves and stuff like that. But it will be interesting to see if you gave the keys. Yeah, true. It would be interesting to see if you gave that kind of amount of time on the ball and that many possessions to another player and empowered them the way that the Rockets have empowered James Harden, and see if it was, I think other players would have similar stats, nowhere near like the 37 points a game he's been averaging for the past few seasons. But, I think he has dominated the ball for the past 5 years in Houston, maybe to the expense of, other players that could have shone and taken on a bigger role, which when Chris Paul came in started to happen a little bit, and that's when they were succeeding. And then as soon as Chris Paul got injured and left, things weren't as good for him. So,
yeah, no, that's true. There's just a feeling of disappointment if this is peak Harden. Like, not like you say, the numbers are phenomenal, but I kind of feel like this is Wilt Chamberlain level, like absurd stats, but never able to take a team over the line. And I get that he won a chip with the Lakers in 70 something. I want to say 72, but that was as much Jerry West's team as it was his.
The question is, just before we move on, would you rather be a Rockets fan or a Knicks fan right now?
Why would I ever want to be a Knicks fan?
I was just thinking of two teams in dire straits. So,
dear. Okay, let's move on. Paul George got an extension signed over the last week, 4 years, 190 million. Worth it?
No, but my summary, I think, was that it's a bad contract that the Clippers had to offer, because it's one of those moves where they've signed him into bird rights. So even if they let him go at the end of the season, they couldn't use that cap space to go and sign anybody else. So it's better than losing Paul George for nothing. And also, if he was going to leave, you would probably then think it's more likely that Kawhi is going to leave as well. So we still don't know what Kawhi is going to do, but retaining Paul George for the next few years certainly helps.
Yeah, it gives them a tangible asset they can trade when Kawhi doesn't re-sign, if he doesn't re-sign. But it's just interesting how this one's developed. The way he sort of sold Doc Rivers down the line a bit based on the end of last season. He's sort of said, "Oh well, what was it in the locker room? Oh well, it's done. Let's just chill out and get ready to get back together next year and be serious about it again." Seems a bit, not a guy who's fully invested. But let's play a game of true or false. Did he say that? And you probably know the answers to these. But did he say that? Nice easy one to start. This is where my heart is. I want to retire a Clipper.
I did see that. I'm going to say true.
It is true. So there you go. He's someone who wants to retire a Clipper. He's dedicated to the team. I'm here to stay. We can bring this home. Did Paul George say that?
I'm going to say true. Was that for OKC?
That is upon re-signing with OKC.
Yeah.
Third one. My goal is to win one here. I never want to leave.
Was it? I'm going to say on the theme, is this for the Pacers?
Yeah, the full quote is, I never want to leave Indy.
Yeah.
So this is... So basically, I want to retire to a Clipper is dross. Absolute rubbish. That's it just and this is why Dame Lillard responded Al Capone on Insta, reigniting their ongoing beef that Dame won not the last playoffs before, when he waved goodbye to Paul George and the Thunder. Do you he's not going to retire a Clipper, is he? There's not even a question here. He's going to be out. If Kawhi goes, he's being traded immediately.
Yeah, and these long contracts now, like we're seeing with Harden and all these players, no longer mean that if things don't go to plan, you're stuck there because you just ask for a trade, and it seems to be that the teams have to make it happen. So, I mean, even on the crazy numbers that he's going to be on, like close to 40 million when he's like 34 years old, it's only 4 years, and you would imagine that his game can't decline too much, and he fits that mold of a 3-and-D guy who, I mean, I know I'm going to make the comparison to someone like Wes Matthews, who is earning like the minimum,
3.4 million,
the vet minimum. But he's still a player that you can use. He's not someone who's like literally at the bottom of your roster spot, and you're saying we're spending 40 million on someone who's terrible. And Wes Matthews has just come off a horrific Achilles injury as well.
Well, it hasn't just come off. It was like
a while ago,
15 or something like that.
But
he's had enough time to recover from that. But
maybe not the best analogy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Do you want a bonus round of? Did he really say that? True
Go
or
on,
false?
hit me.
I'm back with my trainer that I had my MVP season. I'm locked in. I'm on Mother. Kirk ain't got a beat button, so I'm on Mother Smurfer's asses.
I think that's true.
Do you remember when his MVP season was?
Is this when he was in OKC and he like finished third or something?
Yeah, so it's true. But his MVP season. Right, don't get me wrong. He had a phenomenal start to the season. Well, not I say start to the season. I remember him being particularly good in March before both his shoulders dropped off and his season basically ended. So that MVP season that he's claiming as his MVP season, you've correctly confirmed that he finished third in the voting. Do you know how many first place votes he got? This isn't even like
I don't know this.
You do, because the answer's none.
What a great MVP season that is.
So I feel like I don't get me wrong. I think he's a great player. Like he's a potential MVP candidate. I don't see him ever winning one. He is a potential defensive player of the year. He is potentially a top 8 player. But do I think we're ever going to get that? I don't think we're ever going to get that.
This is a discussion that we need to have another time. But so many people on different podcasts and everything just throw these things out like, oh, he's a top 5 guy, he's a top 10 guy, but they must say it about like 50 players.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. He is not. He has the potential to be though, because he's potentially top 3 MVP, potentially top 3 defensive player of the year. That has to be someone who's in the top 10. I said top 8, so I'll stick with top 8, even though that's just a random number. He has to be someone who would be. Yeah. If he got both of those, he's easily within the top 8 players in the league. But his health, his lack of clutchness, side of the backboard 3, all of these things detract from his, where he would rank in the league. And to be honest, I would not have paid 190. I get why they have, and I understand why they have, but 190 million for him is just obscene.
But then, what's the guy called? Steve Ballmer's got more money than anybody else in the NBA to like just pay whoever he wants, so he might as well go and do it. I'm liking that he's being called Paid Off P. His nicknames have been the best over the past few months. Was it like Way Off P, Paid Off P, like Pandemic P?
What?
Just incredible nicknames coming out.
It's Paid Off P is a great shout. That's Rich Barrett. I saw. He's put it in the chat as well, but I saw him put that on Insta the other day, I believe. Do you want to say any more on Paul George? I'll take that as a no.
No.
Right, let's roll on. Let's do a quick COVID update. So obviously the season's about to start. They announced the results of the testing on December the 10th. What was that? Friday? It was so a few days ago. But 541 players tested for COVID since December the 2nd. 8 new players had returned positive tests. So initially there was 48 players. That's dropped quite significantly to 8 players once they're back in markets. That's a good thing. You hopeful that this is a trend we continue to see? Do you think it's realistic once we start to get players moving from city to city that it remains as low as that?
Yeah, I think we've just got to prepare that like as soon as a few people get it, that's just going to like balloon into more. And I think we were so blessed during the bubble that we had 0 cases pretty much that kind of became the norm for us for like a couple of months. And so whenever we're hearing about people catching it now, we're kind of getting a bit worried about how that's going to affect the league and whether it's going to come back. Some people have still been questioning whether we're still going to see the league return in just a few days. I think we definitely will. I think teams are now just getting used to the regulations that are being sent out and getting prepared for what's going to be a different season, and probably one that's going to benefit teams that have got a lot more depth, just to kind of cover them as people go out.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair assessment. We're going to get a season start, definitely, and fingers crossed we get a season finish as well. But there will be some. There's got to be some instances along the way where star players miss out on a game, or well, it's going to be more than a game by the time they've quarantined and been through it. They're going to miss out on about quick maths, 9, 10, 11 games. Let's move on to Nick's silly nonsense, which as we segue into this, we had a listener question linked to it. So I'll lead with the listener question, who's actually now in the chat as well, Richard Fang 8. What are your opinions on the potential that Jason Tatum has grown to 6'10", and how has no one noticed till now?
Yeah,
What?
so this is something that... Here we go, the sound effects are back.
Nope.
He's piping up now. He's got his power back. This is something that Brad Stevens was on about. He kind of just slipped it in there. Jason Tatum's now 6'10", which, I mean, he did. This is such a nothing comment from me. He looked tall last season. But whether he looks 6'10" or 6'8", I can't really say. But I mean, it's only going to add to his game, isn't it? So, you know, he's a guy that is only getting better. So being 2 inches tall is only going to help him get closer to the rim.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking Brad, because me and we're on first name terms. I'm taking Brad's comments with a pinch of salt, and would like to see the official league verified height, given the importance they've now placed on statistical measurements now that they've allowed gambling and betting on the league. All the data has to be fully kosher. But in all seriousness, the science behind it is there. Like he could have grown. I mean, the guy's 22. You don't stop growing till you're 22 to 25.
I think, any taller than, we've just said it, like you, so much more prone to injuries. But I think 6'10" for me is like the prime height. And so getting much taller than that doesn't really give you much more, apart from on the defensive end, where it's an interesting balance between, you've got the size to get the blocks in and that kind of thing, but do you lose a bit of mobility and a bit of foot speed on the defensive end as well, which is maybe more valuable when you're already that tall. So,
yeah, maybe. I'm assuming he doesn't get any more injury prone. And then the last one I had, I would give 2 extra inches of vertical jump to either Hamidou Diallo or Pat Connaughton, because that would put them up at like basically almost 4 foot off the ground.
Hold up, sorry. Every week when I'm on, I feel like you say Pat Connaughton, and the way you pronounce it, I always think I need to pull this guy up on it, and I'm not
Pat
done
Connaughton, or do you want to do Pat Connaughton?
How did you say it, just?
Pat Connaughton.
You didn't. I'm
did.
sure you said like Pat Connaughton or something bizarre.
Look, man, you've said trolling. What's trolling?
True.
You mean trolling?
Trolling. I don't know.
Say
I only ever type.
Don't come at me with regionalised accent slander.
Connaughton's not regionalised, it's just wrong.
No, Connaughton, I think I said because I listened to, I did say it a few weeks back as Connaughton, and 100% it was because in my head I was listening to the Mismatch, and your old friend who you interviewed on the show, Chris Vernon, says, I'm sure he says Connaughton.
Yeah, I think so.
And it just makes me chuckle, and then I got it stuck in my head and couldn't remember which was the right one. Okay, so that was Nick's silly nonsense, and I believe the stream is back up and running now. So apologies to everyone who missed out on that little bit. You'll now have to go and download the podcast and listen to it again.
Yeah. What a segment that was that you can't miss.
It was unmissable. It was Nick's silly nonsense, and it was possibly the greatest piece of content we've ever done. Talking D on Discord. We've had a few chats on Discord going on this week. Obviously, the sort of preseason chat is starting to bubble and building again as we head into the real season. Fantasy League chat is huge. We're going to do a live stream of the Fantasy League draft, which is potentially going to be a 20-team or 20-man draft, which should be...
Someone do the maths and say that that's like 300 players that will be required. So
well, we're drafting 13 deep, so... close to 300. Yeah, it's not going to be far off. I don't think we're going to do the full 15. I think I've done it so you get 10 players on the game on the day squad and then 3 reserves. So yeah, it won't be 300 players. But if it is, just hit auto. If you don't want to go that far, just hit auto pick and quietly sit in the corner. Okay, let's get on to Discord listener questions. Or just before we do that, if you aren't already on our Discord, please go and join us, discord.me/doubleclutch. So, Rich Barrett, aside from the team you usually watch or follow, which one team can you see yourself watching a ton of games or focusing on?
I think it's going to be the Suns, probably, just because, especially early on, like nobody really knows what they're going to be, whether they're going to be like top end of the West or still kind of fighting to get into that play-in race. So I think early on, watching a lot of the Suns, maybe later on, the teams with more young guys or more uncertainty. So maybe the Bulls with all of their young guys, and now with Billy Donovan, who's notoriously a good coach for young guys. And maybe OKC, just for that Pokusevski guy, who's like 7 foot tall and is knocking threes down, but is lighter than Kyrie. Like,
yeah.
Just watching him play is bizarre.
7 foot tall and 6 inches wide. Yeah. Yeah, so
give the 2 inches to him. He needs it.
Yeah, it's a width. Give him the 2 inches on his shoulders. I'm in a weird position where I imagine you're not, where I don't watch my favorite team as much as I watch other teams. Like I've got to the point now where my attempt to be as objective as possible has caused me to be negatively subjective towards my team. So I detest their errors way more than I should, and I watch them less than I should. So last season, the top 3 teams I watched were Dallas, Memphis, and Milwaukee, and it's probably going to be a similar rotation, but maybe more Phoenix and less Milwaukee. I don't know. I don't know. I just go for teams that sort of fringe, apart from Milwaukee, obviously, but sort of fringe on the up. Exciting teams that aren't necessarily going to win, but you're going to see some flashes of brilliance. So they'd be mine. Just going back to the fantasy draft, we've had a question in the Twitch chats from Ben Bean 5. Who will be the most random player picked? I
mean, I kind of jokingly said it on the Discord earlier, but how high someone like Taylor Horton Tucker is going to get picked, who scored 33 points last night for the Lakers and was pretty much a nobody for the past couple of seasons since he's been drafted. Somebody like him, I think that, I don't know. After like 3 or 4 people in this fantasy draft, I don't know who these guys are that are going to be making picks. So if it's people that have been out of touch for years, and then they're just seeing these names that have been out of it, like I don't know who's still available to draft in terms of like retired players. But it'd be pretty funny if someone was taking like, I don't know, Chandler Parsons, who's just not good at the moment.
I reckon someone's going to accidentally take LiAngelo Ball.
Who just got waived. That'd be brilliant.
Who literally just got waived. They're going to think they're getting LaMelo, and they're going to take LiAngelo. Okay, next question. Matt Hardy at UK Nets fans. Who has the worst NBA nickname, and why is it a dead heat between Spider and Ice Tray?
I'm not really good on the bad nicknames front. I did notice it's worth adding that on Basketball Reference for Kyrie, World B Flat.
That's a fantastic one.
Being added, which is not a bad one by any means. That's one of the most incredible ones I've ever seen. But have you got any bad ones?
Yeah. So firstly, I don't think Spider's that bad. Like I think it's all right. He got it because he dunked a lot, so he was hanging around up in the air like a spider, I guess. Ice Tray is terrible. It's so bad. Like, is there anything less threatening than an ice tray?
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of things that are, initials and numbers. Although CP3 is always going to be CP3 to me, but I don't like PG-13, D12.
I don't really count them as nicknames. I read an article before this just to try and get a feel for some of the worst ones out there. So just couldn't think off the top of my head. And this guy was like ranting about how like D Wade and all these like shortened names are the worst ones, but I don't really class them as nicknames for me.
I've got a D Wade T-shirt that literally just says D Wade, and the amount of people who come up to me and go, "What's Dwade?"
Yeah.
You know what? I just try and make something up because I don't want to just go through the whole time. I've got bored of saying no. It's D Wade for blah blah blah. Anyway, some of the worst nicknames was Damon, the world's greatest shooter, Jones. who gave himself that nickname and has never been considered the world's greatest shooter.
No.
A personal favourite, Corey Bad Porn Maggette.
Ooh, that's not a great one, is it?
No. So I had to find out why he was called Bad Porn. And it's because despite this might need to be bleeped, despite there being a lot of penetration and scoring, the viewer still remains unhappy.
Oh no.
That's
brilliant. That is great.
I'm not a big fan of Gallinari's one. It's literally a translation of his name in Italian. So Gallo literally translates to rooster. One that I do like, it's so bad it's good, but Spud is obviously a nickname, although a lot of people don't realize it. So he got it from his grandma as a kid because she thought his head was misshapen and looked like the old Soviet satellite Sputnik.
What?
Which is just amazing. And I'm going to date myself here, but it just immediately brings back the scene from So I Married an Axe Murderer, where Michael Myers is playing us. You've never seen the So I Married an Axe Murderer, have you? So I'm just going to stop that train of thought right there.
Come on, you can't start and then not
just Google. Oh God, what would you Google for it? I'll drop the link somewhere. But basically,
it was at this moment that he knew he fucked up.
Basically, but Mike Myers, it's one of pre-Austin Powers film. It's like from 1991. But it's where you first sort of see him trying to play a Scottish person as a random bit part, and he plays his own dad, and his own dad is shouting at his younger brother, and he's calling him Sputnik, and he's like, his head's spherical but quite pointy in parts, and it's just a terrible but excellent scene in my mind. But anyway, now we've had that massive diversion. Let's have a quick look. I think that's it we got in for questions, which is good. Someone's said in the chat, you can still draft KG on ESPN. So
there you go. Someone's going to do it, surely.
Yeah,
with like the 260th pick.
That would be good.
Just do it.
Okay, so let's go on to. We haven't got a game of the week to watch yet because we thought, it's preseason. We won't do that yet. We'll start again with that next week. But what content would you recommend consuming this week to get ready for the new season?
Good question. And it depends how much of a nerd you are, but I've been really enjoying some of the Dunked On stuff. They've moved a lot of their stuff now to it's behind a paywall, but the stuff that they put out is great. I would probably say the Zach Lowe stuff is the best that I've listened to recently. He's been kind of doing the rounds with a lot of local reporters, so like taking each team and doing 20 minutes on each team. And that's been really informative because he's very in the know about all of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes with different front offices. But then you also get a really informative insight into what's going on with each team because you've got the local reporters there as well. So the Zach Lowe podcast, definitely a good one to tune into. Or the Low Post, it's called.
Yeah, that's one of my firm regular ones. Mine would be, just like I mentioned it earlier, the Hiatus Draft Woj 3-part series pod is brilliant. It's on his normal feed. It came out, I want to say last month, but I've only just got around to it now. And the amount of detail it goes into is phenomenal. Like just how he got to where he is now. And so much of it is around Atlanta, who actually had an agreement to pick him with the 17th pick.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, given the narrative that's going to go on this season, I don't know, something about it is just sort of, it's set alarm bells off ringing for me because Atlanta have now acquired a lot of assets that could look appealing in a trade. So could there be a sign and trade here? Because he talks about how, this is a guy who's all about family. He's all about loyalty. And he knows that this franchise was desperate to get him. They had him in for a secret workout. They had him around, they were the only team to do this. And there's part of me just like, is this Woj doing the pod version of a subtweet? It's complete conspiracy theory, but it is an excellent pod series, and I recommend going and listening to it.
Yeah, with the Atlanta thing, I know they really, really wanted him desperately, but then they weren't willing to move up from 17 to 15 or 16. So, what actually happened speaks more than what they're saying now, because obviously everyone's going to come out and say, "Oh yeah, we were just waiting to take Giannis with the next pick," but it's never going to happen. So,
Well, I don't know. It's an interesting one, but I'm sure I know Richard Fang is a massive Bucks fan. He is probably going to be. It's going to be squeaky bum time for him for the next 7 days, working out whether or not he re-signs. Let's just quickly go. Does he re-sign? Yes or no?
No, I don't think so. He can sign the same extension at the end of the year, so there's no point doing it now.
I'm with you. I don't think he re-signs before the deadline of the 31st. So on that note, we will let you carry on with your evenings and your weeks whenever you are listening / watching this. Thank you to everyone for dropping in tonight. If you head over to doubleclutch.uk, we've got some new articles up there. There's the return of Maury Ball, which is a debut article from Paul Keddy. The Step Back Special, which is from Sean Guest. SWG is Chris Paul, Kobe Bryant, and David Stern's legacy. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in live to the Twitch and all the new followers we get frequently on both Discord and on Twitch. It's really good to see so many people jumping in and getting involved. Random person who joined today, Matthew, no idea who he is, but welcome aboard the Discord. Thank you very much for listening. If you're not already following us, at Double Clutch UK on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, discord.me/doubleclutch, and twitch.tv/doubleclutch UK. Thank you very much. We'll be back next week for basically the last pod before the season starts. So it's going to be something slightly different because, it's going to be Christmas as well. So tune in for that. You're not going to want to miss it. Thanks for joining us again, Tom. See you guys next week.
See you later.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.